Thanks for being here. I want to thank particularly Mark and Teresa Basilis for again hosting us. We've been here a number of times. And the neighbors who are here, thank you for again honoring us with your presence. You have been stalwart and steadfast. The mayor has been a real champion, and the emergency responders, the police and fire in Hampden really have been a model in the wake of these tornadoes. But what has most impressed me, I'll just say as a personal note, is the way this community came together, really helping each other, rallying around each other in the wake of this terrible natural disaster. And the mayor, thank you for your leadership in the wake of all of the damage that was done. As you know, the tornado and thunderstorms hit on May 15th. The governor asked for a disaster declaration. FEMA has denied individual assistance, although it has granted public assistance to the towns of Fairfield County and New Haven County. It has denied that public assistance to Roxbury, New Milford, and Bridgewater. What brings us here today is the denial of individual assistance, which means compensation for all of the damage done to homes as well as for debris removal. FEMA treatment of the victims of this damage has been deeply unfair and unreasonable. It has denied individual assistance to homeowners like Mark simply because a lot of their damage was fallen trees and other debris that had to be removed. Lest you think these costs are minor, the amount of debris removal required on this property alone was somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 worth. And others suffered up to $70,000 worth of damage as a result of debris removal. But the fault is not only FEMA's, it is the statute, because the statute bars consideration of debris removal, and that's what we want to change. We want to amend the law, the Stafford Act, to require consideration of debris removal and to make homeowners eligible for aid as a result of the costs of debris removal. Why is that important? Well, first of all, the damage as a result of fallen trees, even if they don't hit homes, is still very, very significant in dollars as well as other ways. So homeowners ought to be compensated for debris removal. But equally important, the homeowners who suffer a hit to their homes receive no aid because the damage assessment by FEMA is barred from including debris removal in meeting the threshold eligibility amounts. So even the homeowners whose homes have been hit, even if it's more than just debris removal, suffer from the current law. And this measure would require not only compensation for the homeowners who suffer costs as a result of debris removal, but also it would mean that FEMA must consider debris removal in considering the eligibility of the entire area for individual assistance. That is extraordinarily important. It would, in effect, revolutionize the process for assessing eligibility of areas for this kind of FEMA aid. And that is consequential not only for Hampden and other communities around Connecticut that suffered tornado damage, but also nationally. And we're about to see additional damage in Florida as a result of the hurricane that is bearing down there. This measure would be retroactive. So homeowners like Mark and Teresa and others here would receive aid for the tornado damage as a result of the retroactive application, making the entire area eligible because the cost of debris removal would have to be considered. And just one more point, debris removal generally is not counted for homeowners insurance. So there's a double unfairness here. Homeowners insurance doesn't cover it, FEMA won't cover it, homeowners like the ones standing here are simply out of luck. The moral of this story is debris removal costs should count. They are catastrophic for some homeowners. They should count for FEMA. Failure to count them is unfair and unwise. And that's what our statute would change, making it fairer, more reasonable, so that these homeowners and others in Hamden and around Connecticut would be made whole for the tens of thousands each have paid for removal of this debris. So with that, I want to turn it over to a real champion for Hamden, for New Haven, for the entire congressional district she represents, and a champion for homeowners, Rosa DeLaura. Thanks so much for leading this bill.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much, Senator. And Teresa, Mark, thank you so much. And we've got a great connection here.
Sure.
So thank you. Thank you. And Mayor, you've stood with us so many times over and over again, but you stood at the forefront of this effort. And I think folks in Hamden know that, know where you have been and how you have led the fight in their best interest. So, and to the homeowners, sometimes you think that you're by yourself. Understand, things take a long time, but you need to know that you have federal government, local government, state government that's really on your side in these efforts. And you've got the council here and the council members who are your allies in all of these events. You see, you know, sometimes people want to know where legislation comes from. No one sat in a room and said, I think we'll do a piece of legislation that talks about making homeowners whole for what's happened to them with the felling of trees, etc., which have not hit their property, but in fact have caused great damage in this tornado. It is because we have all been out here since that May tornado, since that storm, which did so much damage, whether it was Bethany or Beacon Falls and right here in Hamden. We have seen the devastation. Not only have we seen it, but it has been felt by the homeowners. It was their cry to us that how can you help us? We have all these trees that have fallen down. We have all of this debris. And in fact, we are not covered. Our insurance won't cover it, as the senator pointed out. What we found is that with this declaration, the emergency declaration, and the federal government, we believe it was an erroneous decision that was made not to include individual assistance here, and they are crying out for help, which is what prompted the initiation of the legislation. And I compliment Senator Blumenthal for his introduction in the Senate, and I've had the opportunity to introduce it in the House. And Congresswoman Esty is working with me on that, as is Senator Murphy with Senator Blumenthal. So we are all engaged and involved because what we found was this is a real problem. What does it necessitate? It necessitates going back and looking at the statute and saying, okay, this is not working in the way that it should be. We are leaving people in the lurch with thousands and thousands of dollars in bills that they cannot pay. Sometimes the cost is an annual salary. That's not right. That's unfair. So FEMA, Stafford Act, we're coming down the pike. We want to make the change. We also want FEMA to take a look at its rulemaking so that this can get changed. So forth. Now, this has been introduced. Some of you are going to ask us the question, well, aren't we coming to the end of a legislative session? Yes, that's in fact right. But one of the things that hasn't been done in the House is that the Department of Homeland Security appropriations bill has not been completed. Maybe, and we're looking into whether or not we can attach something like this to the Department of Homeland Security bill. I don't have an answer for you right now, but that's a road we're going to try to go down to see if we can move sooner than later on the legislation. Otherwise, yes, not going to, tell you otherwise. We have to wait then for next year to do it. But you need to know that we are prepared to make this fight because, Florida is now at risk. We are going to have this problem again. And what we want to do is to make sure, and I believe we can get the support for this because this doesn't only happen in Connecticut. This is happening everywhere. And that means you lock arms with your colleagues in order to turn this around. So I'm pleased to be here with you today. I want to thank you for never stopping to let us know what's going on in your lives. And hopefully what we can do is to turn it around and to try to make a difference. Thank you very, very much.
Yeah. And on that point, I just want to say, there should be nothing partisan about this legislation. We're introducing it right now, but tornadoes, hurricanes don't hit just blue states or red states. They hit the United States. And this unfairness is felt across the country. It's not just Connecticut. The plight of these homeowners and their legitimate grievances ought to be heard across the country because the unfairness is felt across the country. And so I believe we're going to find Republican partners as well as Democratic colleagues who are willing to support this kind of legislation. It's a gap. It's a loophole that needs to be filled in the interests of home ownership, which is the American dream. And this kind of legislation really ought to unite us, and we need to be united more than ever at this point in our history. Let me now turn it over to Mayor Kurt Lang.
Thank you, Senator. My remarks are really simple today. We get involved in government because we want to try and help people. We want to try and help our neighbors and help our community. And I couldn't be more proud and thankful of our federal delegation, our state delegation, and our council. Senator Blumenthal, Representative DeLauro have been here, I think, 3 different occasions in Hamden as a result of this tornado. They've met with residents. They've worked with government officials. They talked about getting help. And we've gotten help on the government side. But when there was that loophole, that gap, they didn't say, well, we tried, and we had that press conference, and we're gone. They came back again, and now a third time to actually introduce legislation to try and change what I think is a flaw in the statute. So I'm very thankful to both of them for being here, for fighting for us, fighting for our community, fighting for our neighbors in this situation to try and help. The town's costs are going to be pushing $3 million. The town can carry that, and we've gotten reimbursement. Residents have expenses that they can't carry, and they don't have reimbursement. It's not fair, and I'm very thankful that we have 2 people fighting for our community. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
And now I want to say a special thanks to Mark because he took time. He works at Sikorsky.
Yeah.
31-year veteran at Sikorsky, producing the Blackhawks and the new 53s. And thanks, Mark, for all your work for our nation.
It's not just me. The whole team does it.
Yeah.
It's a great team.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I want to say thank you for coming out
Why don't you come a little closer?
and hearing our voices out here. It's 30 years ago we had a tornado, and FEMA stepped in. They took care of everything. Now we asking them for their help again, and now they're turning their heads. So what makes a difference from 30 years ago then to now? Why they're not going to help us now, the neighbors? So
We're going to try.
going to try, right?
We're going to try, right.
But I mean, there's a lot of people that are worse off than we are. We're very fortunate. So, but we got to stick together, do what we got to do, and push for it.
You're here.
You know. But,
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thanks
Yep.
a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to?
Anyone else? Anybody else want to say something?
Liz? Linda?
Thank you.
So I actually live right around the corner from here, about 3 minutes away. So just a very, very quick story. I was actually out the day of the tornado getting warnings that we were going to have a flash flood. Totally ignored it, went out with my dog. Sky turns from light blue to nearly pitch black, and I'm booking it through the woods, get back to the house, jumping over wires. My dog gets picked up and lifted about 5 feet. Make it back. I have a huge maple in my front yard that got totally uprooted. Got some damage to the back of my house. So this for me is not just, yes, I want to help my neighbors, I want to help the town, but I lived it, I experienced it, so I understand it personally as well. So I just want to extend again my thanks to the mayor, to Representative DeLauro, and to Senator Blumenthal. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. I personally appreciate it, and then I also appreciate it in my role as state rep as well. So thank you.
Your name, please.
Representative Josh Elliott.
Josh Elliott.
Josh Elliott.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Anyone else?
Any questions?
For Mark, can you talk about what sort of a financial impact it's had on you and your wife? I mean, Senator Blumenthal talked about $40,000 to $50,000. Did you have to go out and take a loan out? How did you pay for
financially, we're very fortunate because my insurance, because I have septic system, the root balls damaged my leaching fields. So because of that, I was able to get my septic contractor out here to take care of all the root balls. Okay. And also I called the Samaritan's Purse, who came up and offered free help. So they came in the backyard, they cut up all the wood in the back, they brought everything out in the front here and here. Then help from guys from work that I work with wanted the wood because they burn the wood, I don't. Okay. So I gave away all the free wood.
But the damage, the assessment of the damage, the assessment of the damage, Mark told me, was between 40 and 50, around $44,000. He was very fortunate. The Samaritans came in, did a lot of work for him.
Right.
Other homeowners, obviously not so fortunate. The amount of damage suffered by individuals was up to $70,000. That's been what's reported to our office. And we're here not because of Mark's individual hardship, but because of, I mean, anybody who saw his backyard, you know the kind of damage we're talking about, and I think most of you have probably file footage of it. It was, the whole backyard was completely inaccessible. It was covered with trees and debris.
Not just Mark's backyard, but you all were there when you saw so many backyards, and what we saw subsequent to that, and you know, being out with the mayor, was people just struggling to figure out how they were going to get the tree that didn't hit the house to the road so that they could get picked up. If anyone has ever had a tree fall in the backyard, you know what the cost is for one. And there were several of these cases. That's wherein lies the kernel of trying to look at how you change the Stafford Act in order to accommodate what is the reality of what's happened. That was so evident as we went house to house, door to door, and talking to people, whether it was in Hamden or it was in Beacon Falls or Bethany or other parts of the state. That it said, my God, what do you mean that you can't do that? And then you know, in the law it says no individual assistance.
If I had to pay somebody to come out and take that wood away, it would have cost me over $30,000.
Right.
But because of the Samaritans came in, they offered free help. So now,
good people.
After we're done doing what we have to do, I'd like to send them a donation for helping us out.
Where do you think that Republican support might come from?
I think it should come from all over the country. You know, Oklahoma is Tornado Alley. Florida is about to go through another hurricane hit. Obviously, the Carolinas. They're all represented by two, in the case of Florida, one Republican senator. But the Carolinas, Oklahoma, and that Midwestern section, as well as Texas and Florida, the Carolinas, they are heavily Republican in the United States Senate. And they should be joining this kind of legislation and telling their folks, we're trying to fix a fault and flaw in the law. That's basically what it is. It may have been unintended, but it's clearly egregious, and it denies homeowners the benefits of help for the debris, and it may not just be trees, it's also other stuff in other states.
It's on
If
your
you've ever,
property.
if you've ever watched, and I suspect you do, you watch C-SPAN. You watch what happens on the floor of the House. I'll speak about the House. When there is a natural disaster, there is oftentimes the proceedings are stopped. The Democratic members of these various states that the senator listed, and the Republican members stand in the well of the House. They ask for a moment of silence. They talk about the disaster which has befallen them. They are united, and oftentimes not united on very much, but united on asking for help and assistance to take care of their businesses and their people. So you have a visual of this all of the time. That is what will motivate people to sign on, Democrats and Republicans.
The Stafford Act, can you talk about when this was created, and was the language adjusted at some point to then not include this sort of damage? Can you explain?
I apologize. I don't know the legislative history of the Stafford Act.
Stafford Act.
I think it dates from the very beginning of the Stafford Act.
All right.
But Rosa makes an excellent point. In the Senate as well, we have moments of prayer and silence. Prayer and silence are fine. They're good. But we need action. And especially after the Carolinas, now Florida, there has to be a national outpouring of more than sympathy, real action to help these areas. And all too often in the Northeast, we have to fight all the harder because people regard us as better off, but not the case. It's a fiction, a myth, and we had to go through it with Storm Sandy.
7
Rosa
months.
DeLauro was a champion there.
7 months.
But you made another point, which I'll just briefly touch on. Homeowners insurance should cover debris removal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
Homeowners insurance currently is completely inequitable and unfair in failing to cover debris removal. It has to be more than just the damage to the home. It ought to be the costs of removing trees and other debris.
The only recourse now is, as I understand it, is an SBA loan
Right.
to do this. And I mean, you think about what that means and what that process is. But that is the only outlet that folks have at the moment, which is why the need for legislation.
Congressman, you mentioned the Homeland Security funding. What's the deadline for that, when that has to be?
Listen, the deadline was September 30th. It was September 30th, but it's been carried on in a continuing resolution. We go back on December 7th. Those appropriations bills that are still undone, will, can continue, and we will see what will happen. That's why I say we have a little bit of time in November and maybe the early part of December to see if there's anything that can be done. I don't raise expectations, but I think, just in fairness, to tell you what we're going to try to do to make it happen. We may very well not be able to do that, which means we set up ourselves for figuring out what we try to do with more time next year on this. But it's retroactive, as the senator
Right.
pointed out. So if you've been denied this assistance, then you can go back, which is what we try to cover for as well.
Senator, you mentioned we're obviously here in New England. We don't normally think of this part of the country as Tornado Alley, but as I'm sure you are, there's been now 8 confirmed tornadoes in this state. Is there an added urgency to this, not just what these homeowners went through, but these changing forecasts? Seems like we're putting more tornado alerts out in the last couple months than you ever think you're
Right. Well, I don't need to tell anyone about the impacts of climate change in
right.
making storms more severe. We are encountering climactic, cataclysmic damage in the Northeast because of tornadoes, steeper, stronger storms. That adds urgency to this change. And I might just say that we are not known as Tornado Alley, but we've had a lot of tornadoes. and they are particularly costly in a state like Connecticut where there is so much foliage and trees. In Oklahoma, they don't have as many trees. Many of you who talk to the utility workers who came here from those states that do have a lot of tornadoes said, we haven't seen this kind of damage anywhere because you guys have so many trees. They're down in the front yards, they've hit the homes. Out in Oklahoma, we don't have all these trees, and so the tornadoes don't do as much damage. So your question is very well taken. We face an intense and increasing urgency because of the mounting severity and magnitude of storms, tornadoes and other storms in the Northeast. And that's a factor that adds urgency here.
Anyone that's been here before to this home, Mr. Basilis' home in his backyard, I urge you to take a look at the yard because it's a really remarkable before and after.
Yeah.
To see, just how much damage was there. It's more visible now that the trees are cleared off to see why it costs so much and why it's so impactful.
How many trees do you think were down? About 15?
About 12.
12 big ones.
Plus 12, 14 altogether. I had two. I forgot about these two over here. But,
Thank you.
Those are a lot louder when you guys are here. It seems like.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank